With the first pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select
Trophy Chase, Tucson, Arizona.
with the second pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select
Cody Smith, Houston, Texas. The fantasy draft room is now on the clock.
Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room. I am Chase. With me, as always, my man Cody. What do we got in store for the people today?
We got the next video of the rookie draft series, our rookie rankings after the NFL draft. We've had that time to digest and see exactly where all of these guys shake out. We've seen the ADP. We've still got some differences in how we rank these guys, especially maybe at the top as well. And so we'll see where that comes into play. I know some of you have been following along and probably already know where that one's going. So the tight ends, it's a position that's very hard to predict. We see it year over year where the guys that we don't exactly think are going to end up hitting, and a lot of them don't even matter. So for the most part, most of these guys probably have a pretty hard time becoming fantasy relevant, but we still got to have them because the position's void. And if one of these guys do hit, they're going to be very fantasy relevant.
Yeah, so there are a few key things we look at. It doesn't always depend on draft capital. And as you mentioned, it is hard to hit as a tight end. So some of these guys might be relevant in 3 or 4 years when we don't care. But we are going to rank how this class did pan out. It was a very athletic class, which is awesome. A lot of draft capital invested into the position. We had a trade up into the first round for Dalton Kincaid, but our tight end one is going to still be Michael Mayer. And I know people are going to be like, that's wild. How could you say that? But Cody, tell the good people.
Yeah, so I still have concerns about Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, he had a very good profile in college and coming out, and is attached to the arm of Josh Allen in a Buffalo Bills offense that is going to be very high powered. I think the kind of issues stem from the tight end hasn't really ever been used as a focal point in that offense. Now they're saying that this is going to be a role where he's going to be used as a slot receiver, and there's been issues with that. So we'll get into more of the issues whenever we do get there, but I don't want to just completely gloss over the fact that we're not even talking about our number one overall guy, because it is a little bit hot takey, especially compared to the rest of the fantasy landscape. Michael Mayer being the number one tight end for our rankings, not exactly where we take them if we were in rookie drafts, because we'll play the value game a little bit more, but Michael Mayer being the number one overall tight end in our rankings still. I know you have the two of them a lot closer than I do, but Michael Mayer, the talent that he put, or the production that he put on the field at Notre Dame, being basically the entirety of that passing offense while he was there, going to a spot with the Las Vegas Raiders attached to Jimmy G, who was elevated a very relevant tight end in George Kittle throughout his tenure there. He gets another guy in Michael Mayer to be his tight end one, with only really having to compete with Austin Hooper, who hasn't been fantasy relevant in a couple of years in most formats. So Michael Mayer really being there to step into the shoes of Darren Waller in the Las Vegas offense with Jimmy G. I just like the upside. I think there's a lot higher floor there. I think there's a spot there for him in week one. Not that Dalton Kincaid doesn't have that, but I have a lot more faith in what Michael Mayer can be from the jump, and I don't have to do much projecting to get him there for him to really be my tight end one of this class.
Yeah, Michael Mayer has a path to early relevance. It is a system that McDaniels has brought over from the Patriots that historically have really liked using the tight end. Jimmy G has like you mentioned, worked really well with Kittle. And I see him getting on the field early and often, which is a key part of it, right? You want to be on the field. Obviously, he can block, but he also can be a pass catching weapon. And I feel like that's something that they will figure out ways to feature him in the passing game very, very early. So yeah, I really like Michael Mayer. I do have them very close. Our number 2 is going to be Dalton Kincaid, so I'll just bring that up as well. But I have them 1A, 1B. I have them in the exact same tier because I have no problem taking either one of them. I like both equally. I was super high on Dalton Kincaid, and it was just figuring out what was going on with that injury. We still know it. It sounds like everything's good to go. His back issue, is cleared up. We've seen Gronkowski have those as well. And I'm not saying he's Gronkowski. I know everyone's been saying he's Travis Kelce. I don't feel that way. Dawson Knox has been in that offense for a while, and I feel like, that may be a problem. I don't know if he's going to just come into targets right away. But yeah, I think Michael Mayer, for me, not only is it the cost to acquire, it's going to be hard for me to get Dalton Kincaid because he's going at the 107, 108, 109, and I have a hard time taking him there unless it's a heavy tight end premium where I got Michael Mayer at the 207. Like I've seen him fall all the way down. Like for some reason, there's this massive gap between Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer in drafts. And I don't fully understand it. But if that's how it is, I think I'm going to own a lot more Mayer than I am Kincaid, even though I think that both of them could be very, very good.
It feels like the trope of the, whatever is the next offensive weapon to go to the Chiefs has kind of ran out. And now that we've got the next offensive weapon that's going to the Bills, I truthfully think that that's kind of what we're doing. And we're relying again on, I think I mentioned it earlier, the promise that he's going to be the primary slot receiver. And anytime I hear that, I have extreme concern anytime I hear that, because there's still going to be guys there. They've still got Khalil Shakir, who they've been raving about as well, being a really improved weapon that they're going to use in the slot as well. Both of them can't be there at the same time unless they're running 4 wide. So they've got a bunch of guys in the stable there. We'll see what the overall offensive usage is for Dalton Kincaid. But like you said, Dawson Knox just seems to be the forgotten man there, who's still going to be there for another year or two. And I just don't think that the usage level is going to be what people are projecting right now, because it seems like everybody thinks he's going to be out there in basically like 3 wide sets every single time, every single snap, and getting like an 80+% snap share. I just don't believe that's going to be the case. I think Michael Mayer could have a path to that much easier than Dalton Kincaid could, and that's why he's going to be my 2. There's just I don't have overall concerns with Dalton Kincaid. I just have concerns with the price that he's going at. And so while I don't have a large separation between Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid either, I can't blame you for taking Dalton Kincaid over Michael Mayer. Will not blame you at all for that. I will blame you for taking him in standard leagues without tight end premiums at the 107, because that's too high.
It's funny you talk about all those Buffalo Bills guys, and you didn't mention the slot running back they have in James Cook. We heard that whole thing too. Pass catching running back. I want to see it. I know that's that's the common thing. Like, oh, you if you see it, it's too late, and it's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. But you know what? The more likely outcome is that he doesn't get featured in that role. And you know what I can do? I can buy him then. So I'm perfectly fine with that, and waiting to see what happens, or making a move for Kincaid. Just taking him at the 107, 108, 109 range is too pricey for me. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of why I fade him in drafts in a way where it's just like, I know I'm going to get Mayer, but yeah, Mayer number 1, Kincaid number 2, same tier. And I think there's I have a gap between 2 and 3, a pretty big gap. Some people put Sam Laporta here in this first tier, and I just can't do it.
I mean, probably I have it a little bit closer. He's the guy, right? Like I don't think Brock Wright or Mitchell are going to be really taking over as the tight end one here. I think Laporta has the opportunity to be there from day one, and be kind of along the lines of Michael Mayer, just kind of be the guy who has to step in from day one because they don't really have anybody else. So the usage will be there. The issue is how this offense has deployed the tight end position in the past. I think that's a little bit too overblown. I mean, we've seen TJ Hawkinson be a top 6 tight end in fantasy one year. Now, What does a top 6 tight end in fantasy mean over the course of a year? And not exactly when you're looking at points per game either, may not actually mean as much. It's hard to be a meaningful tight end in the league as it currently stands. And so that is where you're going to have a little bit less, upside for Sam Laporta in this offense. I do still like the talent, higher RAS guy than we thought he was going to be coming in with a pulling that one up right here, 902, so above a 9 RAS score for him. I mean, Michael Mayer actually has the lowest out of any of these guys. If you are just one of those people who just fully goes by RAS score, Michael Mayer's the lowest one of these guys that we're really going to mention here, down there all the way at 766. He's really, that's not how he plays the game and uses the position to get his leverage in the receiving game. So I like Sam Laporta's floor. I think he'll be there. Maybe like a Cade Otton year from last year. I think that's probably within his range of outcomes. Maybe a Daniel Bellinger whenever he was there at times before he got his eye socket blown out by a punch. Something like that would be kind of what I see for Sam Laporta. Probably not really going to be meaningful in your standard leagues. We're only starting one, but if you're in need of a guy in the premium formats, I think you can put Sam Laporta pretty high up and try to feature him there in the mid-second rounds.
Yeah, I don't have anything against Laporta. I do have questions just about how that offense is going to use him. I know we bring up the comparison to TJ Hawkinson, but they also had no JMO for pretty much the entire season, however you want to look at his usage when he was active. Essentially no JMO. He should be back towards after his suspension. We'll see if they actually use him. But they also added a guy in Jahmyr Gibbs. And it seems like he should be garnering targets. If that is the case and he gets, close to the 80-90 range that we had talked about, that might eat into what the tight end position has available. So again, it's going to be if he can earn those targets. I don't have anything against him. I think I've been seeing Sam Laporta typically going in, I believe, that 207 range. Yeah, 208. He's been going off the board in 208 in a lot of the drafts, which is just a few spots behind Michael Mayer, which Michael Mayer is projected at, or his average ADP is at 204. So it's just a few slots behind him. Not a lot of difference in a lot of people's eyes, but I do think that there's a lot more upside for the top two than I do Sam Laporta. So,
yep. To be a really meaningful tight end, I think that's probably more along the lines of Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid. But moving into the next two, we've got two guys who are actually from the same team here, and another one where I think this is where I really go into the 1A, 1B. I'm actually going to lean against the grain as well, against ADP again, and I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft being the tight end 4 off the board over Luke Musgrave, the guy who was drafted one round later. I like a little bit more of the upside with Tucker Kraft. We've seen him, coming out of the D2 program there compared to Luke Musgrave, but Luke Musgrave doesn't have really any profile coming out. I think he only had 40 catches over his entire span in college. He's really just based on the athleticism and only a 0.1 RAS score, 9.68 compared to a 9.78 for Luke Musgrave. The RAS score isn't that different. I like what I've seen from Tucker Kraft and the production profile that we've seen on the field a little bit more, even though he wasn't as highly drafted. I'm going to lean into that, but I really do think this is a coin flip of which of these two guys hit.
I think so too. And I feel like that's what the Packers banked on, is they're like, all right, we got one of our guys here. We'll take Luke Musgrave. And they didn't expect Tucker Kraft to be there in the third round, and he was. And so they took them both and just said, you know what? We need tight end. Let's make sure one of these guys ends up working out for us. There is really not a massive difference in the two. Like one ran a 4.61, the other a 4.69. Like there's splits where a 1.54 to a 1.6. Like it's all very, very, very close. 3-cone was almost identical. Like everything about it is identical. I just think that Tucker Kraft is going to have an easier time getting on the field early. He can block. He can kind of do it all, where Luke Musgrave is more of that move tight end where you think he's going to be featured more in the passing game. But again, his profile, we don't really know what he can do. Can he run routes effectively? Can he create separation? Is he going to be inline? I have more questions about Luke Musgrave, and we've seen tight ends go later in drafts, end up being the better tight end on a team. So I'm with you, and that's why we have Kraft here above Luke Musgrave, but I do have them in the same tier. I wouldn't blame you for taking Musgrave. I get it. I see the potential there. But if I'm taking my bet, and I have taken my bet, I have a lot more Tucker Kraft than I do Luke Musgrave. Not only for because of cost of acquisition, just because of what I believe in too. And I feel like the players in that range that are usually available, I think, I believe Musgrave's going at the 304, and then you're having Tucker Kraft at the 309 in most drafts.
And cost of acquisition is going to be the biggest thing for me. I think I've gotten my first Luke Musgrave share, and it's in a standard league where he went to waivers because we only have 3 rounds of draft picks. And I was like, I've got the choice between the two here, and I don't actually have to pay for either of them. I might as well just take Luke Musgrave here for the first time ever. So I think I've got like 3 or 4 Tucker Crafts and only 1 Luke Musgrave at this point. It's probably not in a format that even matters. So the cost of acquisition is probably the biggest thing for me. But like you said, Musgrave being more of the move tight end, Kraft being more on the field. I'm going to take the guy who I project to have the higher snap share and just be on the field, getting targets whenever they are in those. You're not always just going to be passing only on third down whenever Musgrave's on the field. You're not just going to only put them in there for only the passing plays versus Kraft for only running plays. It's just, it's not the way you can really construct an offense. I'm going to take the guy with the higher snap share overall and hope that it works out. Again, back and forth though, 1A, 1B. Can't blame me for putting either one over the other. We'll have Kraft.
And in a few spots, I have taken Luke Musgrave on the same team that I have Tucker Kraft, just so I, hedge bets, just like the Packers are doing. So that's what I did there. And I believe that's actually who we have back to back with Tucker Kraft is we're going to have Luke Musgrave. And so we'll have Musgrave there back to back with him. Again, we kind of talked about it a little bit with the concerns. So they are back to back in rankings. And I do get the athleticism part of it and what he can do, the ability to stretch the seam. You saw it in the Senior Bowl, lots of excitement about him. 40 catches in a career just makes me question everything.
It is 47. I did double check.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
47 in 4 years of college.
Big wolf.
It's hard to trust. Production profile isn't everything with tight ends, but I want a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that's just the big thing. So, so we have Luke Musgrave, and then we do have Luke Schoonmaker. And so we got the Scoonie there. And he's another athletic guy, went to a really good situation. We saw Dalton Schultz kind of come out of nowhere where there was the debate of Blake Jarwin or Dalton Schultz, and Dalton Schultz prevailed. Right now you got Hendershot, you have Ferguson, and Schoon comes in, and he's an athletic tight end, and everything we're hearing from One Ray GQ, he's got some insider info. It sounds like Luke might be on the field earlier than we all anticipate. And if that's the case, he has the athleticism to get open, not necessarily the same college production profile that you'd expect, but Dallas has done it before. Maybe they'll do it again.
Yeah, I think the only reason that we really do have him down here is because there has been a little bit of production that we've seen from Ferguson and from Hendershot. If he was stepping into a little bit more clearly of a defined path, I think he'd be a lot higher. I think he'd probably be above this, coin flip of Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, but you have your own coin flip. We have heard the rumblings that it might be Schoonmaker coming out as early as week 1 and really being a featured role in this offense, but there's just other guys there that we've seen be a little bit more productive that we know can still be productive at the NFL level. Schoonmaker still has to make the change. He is athletic though. I think he can step in. He has the upside to step in from day one and be a part of this passing attack that does need some more weapons to really step up and be key contributors for Dak there in the Dallas Cowboys offense. So I like Schoon. I picked up a couple shares of him in my rookie drafts. He's going to be there, and I think he's got a lot of upside, but just a little bit too much unknown for me to really vault him up into the guys that I'm drafting or really targeting in drafts.
Yeah, I think he's actually one of my highest owned rookie tight ends. I have I think 2 shares of Mayer. I have about 5 or 6 of Kraft. I don't have the number in front of me. And then I think I have 6 of Schoon. So just because he's been available and, he's going in the late 3rd rounds typically, and I can pull him up. I think I've got him in the 4th round a few times. So people just don't really know about him or think that it's a fluke. And so I'm happy to take the shot on him and think that Dallas can have another tight end pop up out of nowhere and be relevant. And they did invest some draft capital in him. So let's not forget that. Let's not act like they just found him in the 7th round. Like they did invest some capital into Schoon, and that's going to mean something. So that's kind of the grouping that matters. Those are the 6 that really matter: Mayer, Kincaid, Laporta, Kraft, Musgrave, and Schoon. And then I like Darnell Washington, but he's kind of a distant 7 from there.
Yeah, I think this is the point where, like you said, those top 6, that's the point where I will actually roster them in standard formats. The rest of them, I'm not even rostering if it's not any sort of premium or 2 tight end. unless I just have a really, really deep bench or it's best ball or something, I'm not really rostering the rest of them. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster for me on Darnell Washington, though, from just going, oh, he's only going to be an inline blocker to, holy crap, this guy's actually super athletic and can really run routes and catch. I didn't really know that this was the extent of how athletic he was going to be. And then right back into being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And okay, he's right back into an inline blocker and maybe a red zone threat at best. It just kind of sucks because he's there with the Muth, and the Muth is going to be the main passing weapon from the tight end position. I know the Steelers right now aren't exactly very deep at the wide receiver position, so maybe there's a little bit more there, but I just don't think he's going to get enough work over all of the routes across the field. I think he's really just going to be a red zone threat, maybe like an Eric Ebron season whenever he was there. And I think he caught like 7 or 8 touchdowns, but had almost 0 yards along with it. It's going to be impossible, I think, to really start in a lineup Darnell Washington. And so I'm probably just going to be passing in most formats outside of the tight end premium and 2 tight end sets.
Yeah, I think best ball. I'm willing to take the shot on him. Your description of him of a between the 20s tight end, right? Like he's a red zone tight end threat. Like that's really when you're going to see his pass catching prowess on display. Otherwise, between the 20s, he is blocking all the time, and that is what it is. And yeah, I mean, you're getting him in the late 3rd, 4th rounds. Take a shot on some Darnell Washington, especially in best ball. I'm happy to do that. Other names kind of interest. Yeah, I think Brenton Strange is the only one that got draft capital going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you do have Ingram there. If they do re-sign Ingram, that's done for. Brenton Strange is just a depth piece at that point.
Yep.
Evan Ingram has played so well for them, and it sounds like they want to get a deal done, and they probably will. So if that's the case, see ya.
Yeah, as soon as before the season starts this year, that could get done at any point. Any day you could wake up and Brenton Strange could be behind him for the next 3 years. And you're like, oh, fantastic. You're never getting on the field outside of injury pretty much. So, Brenton Strange, unfortunately, the draft capital probably just doesn't match up to the fantasy output unless you're just playing the long game. Put him on a taxi squad or something like that. I'm fine with that. Otherwise, don't really have too much interest in Brenton Strange. And we'll run through the last couple of names here. Wide receiver, tight end convert Elijah Higgins to the Miami Dolphins has a little bit of hype because the only other thing they have there is Durham Smythe as their starting tight end currently. While they don't use the position, he's probably going to be on the field and getting routes run, probably from the move position. And so Elijah Higgins could be a guy who has the tight end designation who really doesn't play all that much tight end. So there's a little bit of upside there in the Miami Dolphins system. Zach Kuntz is absolutely buried in the New York Jets out of Old Dominion, but he does have a perfect 10 RAS score. So maybe you want to play a little bit of a long game there. Will Mallory with the Indianapolis Colts. Every year we get excited about another Indianapolis Colts tight end, and every year they don't do anything. So I've completely just started to fade Indianapolis tight ends until they show me something. And the last one, Cameron Latu backing up George Kittle, who does have injury concerns. Maybe he gets on the field.
Yeah, I think Kuntz is the only one that I would be willing to just add as depth, just because he is the perfect 10 RAS score, athletic, needs time to develop coming from Old Dominion. But he was at Penn State. So, there's the pedigree of him being a Penn State transfer and whatever. Yep. Either way, he did transfer to Old Dominion. He played really well, but he's going to need some time to adapt to the NFL level. And you got Conklin and Uzama there right now. He's got a couple years. So that might be one you trade for, or you just pick up on waivers and stash on your taxi if you really feel like it.
Yeah, after he has 2 catches over the first 2 years of his career, and then somebody finally leaves in front of him, then you can go pick him up, and it's
this guy
not worth the roster spot in most formats.
You're right. Absolutely right. Anyone else you want to touch on here, or should we wrap out?
No, I don't think I got anybody. Those last ones, Higgins, Kuntz, Mallory, Latu. Outside of that, even in 2 tight end premiums, you'd have to get me in a 2.0 plus and 2 tight end premium to even roster anybody else.
Again, let us know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. And thank you for joining us here in the Fantasy Draft Room.